Welcome everyone to another episode of the podcast, The Attacking Two. I'm your host Jimmy Funnell, and I'm joined by both fellow host Andy Martin, and today also a returning guest Ram Srinivas, my fellow writer at We Ain't Gonna History, who'll be joining us today to speak about the humiliation that took place yesterday, and also how several of Chelsea's youngsters could be the key to a successful future. Of course, we will also be addressing Maurizio Sarri and other various topics that emerged after yesterday's defeat. So without further ado, you know the question.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Okay, before we start, I'd like to plug our guest. Make sure to follow Ram under his Twitter handle at RamS. That is with a double R at the start and with three S's at the end. That's his Twitter handle. And of course, do follow his articles at We Ain't Gonna History. His loan roundups are always worth a read to keep up to date with every single loanee, and there are a few. So go and give that a try. Of course, you can find all our plugins in the description below. Okay, so Ram, lovely to have you on.
Hi.
Sad occasion, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get straight into this. I think there's not much to talk about the actual game as such because we know how it went. But I'd like to know, what were your first thoughts at full time?
My first thoughts at full time were, thank God it's over.
Yeah.
But the prevailing sentiment was, I don't know, it just got me thinking about a lot of things to do with the way the club has progressed over the years. I mean, so I didn't really think too much about the result itself because, we lost 4-0 to Bournemouth 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah.
It just got me thinking about what exactly is happening at the club and where it's going. So less about the game itself and more about where we are at this point in time. Although I will say that I thought Kante and Higuain performed better than the rest yesterday. I liked Higuain because he seemed like he was actually trying. One of the few players who looked like they were trying. So yeah, those are my initial few thoughts. Although we can probably get into the long-term stuff in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually something very important because when Andy and I were watching the game together yesterday, I think we did mention that Higuain did seem, at least in the first half, like the only one who was trying to give it a go while the rest of the team just faltered. And I mean, I can remember Andy's reaction after the first two goals, that was pure desperation, and I can fully echo that sentiment because it was just unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I mean, Andy, share your thoughts.
About the performance, well, speaks for itself. My first thoughts were, and that wasn't at the end of the game, it was already when we were 2-0 down, 3-0 down. It went very quickly. And I thought, all right, back in the days when we had real leaders, and that wasn't even 5 years or 10 years ago, I think with John Terry leaving the club, it all started to fall down, not in the sense of us being not able to getting good results or anything. We still had spells of playing good football without John Terry, of course. But from a mental standpoint, from the mentality of the team, I can absolutely see that there's no one in the dressing room who actually does something, makes something happen if no one else can. And if the team falls down, everyone falls down. Not a single leader in that team, and it wouldn't have happened in all my life watching Chelsea. And of course, the results speak for themselves. It was the worst defeat since 1991, and Chelsea was what a team we were at this age. We surely don't want to go back to these times. So what I see in that team is no urgency, acceptance of defeat so early in the game, not trying, because you can lose a game of football, especially against Manchester City, no doubt about that. And I would have been happy if we actually gave it a go. And you can also lose 3-0, but the way we've lost, like there's not a single player in there who says, all right, we shut down the shop, we're not conceding anymore, we kind of only defend, but we're doing nothing. We were just doing nothing. Players doing, all right, there's I think 3 types of players in that team in yesterday's performance. The first ones are the players who are actually trying, but they can't do anything because they're not good enough. Marcus Alonso, and maybe Jorginho as well. Then there is other players who just weren't turning up. I'm talking about Eden Hazard, Pedro, who tried a bit, but then not really. Rudiger, who was sometimes looks the only leader in the team, but he's not leading by example. He's having a worse performance than I think any performance I've ever seen him play in a blue shirt. And then there's 1 or 2 players who, they were trying. Higuain and Kante, Ram said it correctly, but what can Higuain do if he presses alone? There's no point in that. So it was the worst performance I've ever seen, I think.
That actually, because you just highlighted that, Andy, with the pressing, that was really sad. I felt so sorry for Gonzalo Higuain yesterday. I mean, he was pressing, and it was as if the team completely threw everything that they learned over these past 6 months overboard. I mean, in Sarri's system, when the striker, the centre forward presses, then you have the one winger press with him, plus someone comes from midfield. None of them did that. None. I mean, Barkley was an absolute shambles yesterday. I mean, that third goal was comical. That schoolboy. That's a schoolboy error, really. Is no one does that. Even me, and I don't play professional football. Even I know you just head it away any direction, but not towards goal. I mean, that is, especially when you have someone as potent as Sergio Aguero pouncing at any chance that's given to him. It's one thing I want to address is, I don't know about you, because I know you've mentioned it partially already, but when I came home yesterday and while watching it, when I remember back to this 1-0 defeat we had to Manchester City last year, I was angry. I was really furious. I couldn't stop getting angry thinking about that game. And the same was the case about Bournemouth 2 weeks ago. But yesterday, I couldn't get myself to be angry. I felt lost. I felt completely dejected, completely dead inside. I know this might sound melodramatic, but I've never actually experienced this since supporting Chelsea since the 90s. Never have I seen such a dire performance where we were completely dead after, 15 minutes? And it's just, it was sad. I don't know. I still can't get myself to be really, really mad, because there's so many problems from top to bottom and you don't know where to start.
You know, Jimmy, I think what the difference is, and that is, I think with all of us here speaking, is that last year we weren't in favor of Antonio Conte anymore. So it was really easy for us to get angry. But this time around, we want to do Sarri, or we want to have Sarri for a long time, at least ahead of the game. I was in favor of Sarri staying for a long time. I'm not so sure anymore, but at the same time, we want him to do well. But he simply, is it the players to blame? Is it anything else to blame? So it is kind of a situation where you're standing there and don't know where the source of all the bad stuff coming out of our club is anymore. You're standing there and don't know anything, being just extremely depressed about it.
Yeah, I know that is definitely the case. I mean, Ram, if we now move away from the players, because let's be honest, there were so many shambolic performances yesterday. It'd be necessary to probably have 2 podcast episodes to talk about the individual performances. But one while I would agree with most of the sentiment that the main bulk of the problems yesterday was on the players, Maurizio Sarri shouldn't be seen as being completely not responsible for anything that happened yesterday. Because personally, and this is what I'd like to ask you, is do you think his in-game management, so substitutions, the way he set out the team in the second half, plus his team selection, was a big or played a big part in us losing the way we did?
Yeah, definitely. I had a lot of issues with the team selection yesterday. For one, the left side of Marcos Alonso, Ross Barkley, and sad to say, Eden Hazard is quite weak. It's a glaringly weak area in our game as of now. And I don't think those three should be played together. As good as Hazard is, he is not going through the best patch of form right now. He was early in the season, but now I think it's becoming apparent. I know he shifted to a false nine and everything, but he just hasn't been at it for a while. So, and I know Ross Barkley played well against Huddersfield, but with all due respect, that was Huddersfield. And I would have gone with maybe Loftus-Cheek instead, as Loftus-Cheek would actually offer more retention on the ball in that position. I believe that he could prove to be a more solid option in that left midfield, because in a game such as yesterday's against Manchester City, I felt that we were really struggling to hold on to the ball. We were conceding it to Manchester City at their ease. Their game is all about closing down the right spaces. They don't play tiki taka, but they position themselves in such a way that they're in the best places to receive. I mean, to pressure their opponents into losing the ball easily, and that we were playing right into their hands yesterday because and this is where Sarri's in-game management comes in, because he is not showing the variability that Mourinho or even Conte showed over the last 2 or 3 years or so. Because all I've seen from Sarri over the course of this season is him trying to get his tactic across and to come through in a certain game. And apart from that one variation to the false nine system, while Giroud and Morata were firing blanks week in, week out, he hasn't done much to adapt his system. And the thing is, I feel that his system isn't meant for English football. Not just talking about Manchester City, but you talk about teams like Bournemouth, or it could easily be Cardiff on another day. Basically, teams that sit back, teams that will close you down smartly, but don't necessarily want to hog possession. We will struggle against those teams because we're looking to break their press. We're looking to pass a lot. We're looking to play a lot of short passes. And that sort of game just isn't working. I wish Sarri would make a couple of simple tweaks to his game. I feel that would make a lot of difference in the way that it's being scaled over from Italy to England. But I feel as if he's being very steadfast in playing the same sort of game, and it's just not working. So I wish he were a bit more flexible. I don't have too many issues with him as a manager. He seems like a sound guy. He lives and dies by his philosophy. I respect that. But your philosophy doesn't have to mean that it's set in stone. It does. I mean, you are allowed to make a few tweaks to adapt to the place you're playing in. I think that's very important. So I think he could do with more of that.
That is definitely a good thought, or a good way of beginning to start and counter all these problems that I inherit at the club. Andy, what would you say? Would you agree with Ram's assertions?
Well, there is obviously potential in the tactical area. I think no one would dispute that. But I think where we go wrong and where we go massively wrong is are not tactical issues. I think it's, how can I put it in the best way? It's not only that Sarri is a manager who lives and dies by his philosophy. I also think he is overrated in the sense of personal management. It was always said that personal management, that is one of his strengths, and I think I speculated about that. I think it was a few months ago, and it wasn't that podcast when I said, well, I don't think he gets across to the players, and players of Napoli and players of a club based in London have different attitudes about themselves. It seems like to me that players are not respecting Sarri in a way, and we can now discuss about how a player should carry himself in a football club. And I think a player should always listen to the manager, and no matter what you think as a player, in order to make a system work, you have to play to the system and not to your own strengths. And there are, of course, players, and I don't think a single player in that squad is stupid enough to not get the Sarri system after half a year. So
yeah, but Andy, because you said that you think his man management skills are overrated in that regard, but doesn't that say more about our club, or not the club, but our team, our squad, than about Maurizio Sarri? Because it worked in Napoli, because those are people, or those were players that played for each other, that didn't just shit on his head, that actually took in his advice, took in his tactical instructions, and played what he tried to do as Pep Guardiola. And that is the even more salt in the wounds after his post-match comments actually illustrated.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I would absolutely agree on that. But there's two things in life, There's the one hand where you say, all right, he's a brilliant manager, he knows his football, but players should listen to him because they should listen to him. That's at least my opinion how it should be. But you don't always get it that way, because players can't be stupid enough to ignore it, to not get it. What I think is that players are ignoring him, and players play how they want to play anyway, because the squad isn't big enough, and Sarri is not used to rotating players, so they have a false sense of security there, and the result is losing 6-0 to Manchester City. So what you have to do, maybe to, like, if you have that's the kind of scenario in a company where some guy is leading the company, and he's the brightest guy ever and doesn't understand his business, but simply doesn't get across to his members of staff, and they don't do what he wants. Well, you can now say, well, we should change every single member of staff because they are idiots and they don't do what the boss wants, and the boss clearly is the cleverest person in the room. Or you can say, I changed the boss because obviously that has the most impact, because the players will always be around. They are on long-term contracts, and they clearly have quality. No one is disputing that, but they need someone who they respect, and they know it as well, and they're really self-confident. And of course I want Sarri to succeed, but at the end of the day, if the easiest change to our miserable performances is that you get a new manager in, I have to say, all right, let's do that.
I mean, I've seen all the Twitter or the social media reactions, not only Twitter, to be fair, about the sacking of Sarri being an option. But I mean, while that might help for the first few months, we have to break this vicious cycle of just always heaping all the blame on the manager. I don't think that Sarri's. I mean, he did make big mistakes, and I was pissed off with it. You heard me yesterday. I was very pissed off with his team selection, but the roots stem from somewhere completely else than just Sarri, because this recurring pattern of it being, as Ram mentioned before, with Conte, Jose Mourinho, and now with Sarri, this goes deeper than just the manager. I mean, you can't expect Sarri, after having just a week, not even a week of pre-season with the full squad, and in 2 transfer windows, he's had 2 loanees and two purchases in form of Kepa, Jorginho, and the 2 loanees, Kovacic and Higuain. Is that really him being backed by the board to implement a completely, this is a radical change of everything that has that characterized Chelsea Football Club since 15 years. I mean, I know Carlo Ancelotti played a certain brand of attacking football, but still, and expecting him to just turn everything around in a very short amount of time, what not even Pep Guardiola or Jurgen Klopp was able to do. They needed years. It's madness, and they got all the signings they wanted, and they finally got
but Jimmy,
to put the. I mean, look, let me put it like this: if they don't want to do the backing and they wanted this all short term, if they just want the success and just this short term success, why get Sarri in at all? Why try and start this new philosophy if they're not going to give him the time? They're going to sack him straight away again. Not going to back him. It makes no sense. And I think I would put the main bulk of this fault on the Chelsea board, because not for yesterday, because just for that there's so many factors, but overall over time, for me this all links back to the Chelsea board, the Chelsea hierarchy, having no idea what the fuck they want for the future, no plan how they want to actually get there, because we don't have a director of football, because Roman Abramovich, you heard Sarri yesterday, he maybe has talked with him once or twice. That's it. We are a headless chicken at board level.
Yeah, of course you're right. But I think on the other hand, that is not like a performance like yesterday. It's not down to not having the right players, because we have quality players. It's not down to the board is doing something wrong. It's also not down to we're not playing the right brand of football. It's just down to the mental game and the mental, how can I say it? It's like you don't lose like that. If you're any team in that league, if you're Cardiff, you don't lose 6-0. You don't allow that to happen. Otherwise, you're weak. And I think Jamie Carragher said it yesterday, and I thought there's some truth in the quote. He said Sarri has turned Chelsea into Arsenal, and I'm not sure if it is Sarri, because it is not Sarri alone, but we have no resilience, no urgency, nothing. And that is, I've never seen a Chelsea team as weak, and I used to laugh at Arsenal, but now we're the new Arsenal. The banter days seem to have come around to Chelsea Football Club, and I hope they are not staying around.
What do you think could we do immediately now to pull things around? What does the club or Sarri have to do to turn things around, to get us on the right track? Because every time when Sarri has said it's down to the motivation and has criticised the players, we have brought a reaction the next week or in the next game, which would be then what are they called, Malmo, but you'd expect us to win that anyway. And then the next game they completely fuck up again, which would be Manchester United. So arguably the even more important game. What has the club got to do right now?
So there's a underlying theme of papering over the cracks here, and doing something right now would essentially be the same. Although I do think that right now, if something has to be done, I don't think the board will sack the manager, because I mean, I don't see any alternatives set to take over. I'm pretty sure we're not going to call Go sitting back for another spell. There are people like Van Gaal or Laurent Blanc available for interim spells, but that is, I don't think that's the way to go. I think the onus is on Sarri to, he has to take a look at himself, and he has to look at the way the team has progressed since the start of the season. Clearly, those wins at the beginning were not, a testament to the team buying into his system and passing with flying colors. Sarri has got to take it upon himself to make some changes to the way he plays. He's got to be a bit more pragmatic. I think he's being very idealistic, and even if not as a long-term thing, he's got to do some firefighting right now, and he's got to make some changes. That's what I think that's what any manager worth their salt would do, especially when they know that their job is It's very much on the line, and they're a Chelsea football club. So I think that's what needs to be done. But as I said, it is papering over the cracks because where we find ourselves right now, we're calling ourselves Arsenal. People are calling us Arsenal. And I think we can all agree that there is that sentiment of, us being pushovers this season. We have got to that point because it's a culmination of the way the club has been run for a number of years put together. So I think despite addressing some issues in the short term, which run day to day, things have to change from higher up in the hierarchy and the overall plan for the club, if there is one. So yeah, that's the short term and the long term. They're two very different games.
Okay, and personnel-wise, I mean, I agree with everything you just said because it seems obvious that it isn't just down to the manager and also to the players, but that the board also has to do something. But
Mhm.
what tweaks would Maurizio Sarri have to do? I mean, I know you just broadly mentioned some, but with names now,
Yeah.
what could one do there? Because we will be also talking about Chelsea's youth. I mean,
Mhm.
I openly confess to believing that playing certain youth players would be far more potent and would bring far better results than playing some of the veterans we have.
Mhm.
Which ones could there be? And once you've given your answer, Andy, you can just take straight from there.
Right. So in terms of long-term solutions, that is what you're asking?
Both for now
Okay.
and
Right,
also long
right, right,
term.
right. So right now, I think a few changes Sari could make to his game. I mean, to the way he sets up things overall are one, do not stick to the same set of players for a long time, especially not the ones that are in the team right now. First, I'd like to say that Andreas Christensen deserves more minutes than he has right now, not because he's a youth player, but because Rudiger and Luis have some obvious shortcomings which have been brought to the fore lately. And I think that Christensen looked good alongside Luis, and I think Rudiger should be given a rest for a few games. So that is one of the changes I would make. Christensen is just a more level head in defense overall, and Rudiger and Luis together, not as much. So that is one change. Another change is give Jorginho a rest as well, and in doing so, as I said, make a few tweaks to the tactics themselves. So we know that there's no Fabregas at the club anymore, but Kovacic is more than competent at playing that sort of role. Not exactly the regista, but he can fill in there with. I mean, with not so much of a narrow focus on short passing, because I think Kovacic has much more in his locker. So, firstly, to deviate a little from the regista system and give Jorginho a rest because he has played non-stop from the start. The next thing is that left side of the midfield is a very, very important area. That is where a player has to, for me, that's where a lot of our creativity should be coming from. Kovacic has played there in the past, Barkley, Loftus-Cheek. Alternatively, if Kovacic is not played as the deep lying playmaker, if he's played as a left-sided midfielder, I think Sarri should take the reins off him a little bit because Kovacic's main strength is dribbling. He's very good at dribbling, and we need more penetration, more creativity from that left side of midfield, which is what Ruben Loftus-Cheek currently offers more than the likes of Ross Barkley. Um, but Kovacic can also. I feel that he's being restrained due to the constraints of the system, and he should be unleashed, so to speak, in that role. Another thing is Callum Hudson-Odoi. Again, not because he's a youth player, but he is a much more direct option on the wing, whether it's on the right or the left. And see, it's not as if Willian or Pedro or even Hazard are playing in the best form of their lives right now. we could really use a breath of fresh air on that right hand side. If not, if Hazard is really unshakable from that left, So I noticed that not only Hudson-Odoi's directness, which we saw against Sheffield Wednesday, we saw that he was quite direct with the ball, but his end product was lacking a little bit. But I also noticed that his movement made it pretty easy for Azpilicueta to get forward in a more comfortable manner. I feel that fullbacks are very important to Sarri's system, and that is something he won't deviate from. Marcos Alonso or Emerson, whoever's the left back, underlaps a lot. But the right back is usually the one who stays a little wider. And Azpilicueta is, my personal opinion is that he's been a better left back than a right back. But I felt that, Callum's direct movement on and off the ball facilitated Azpilicueta to have more freedom on that right-hand side. So I would put Callum Hudson-Odoi on that right-hand side, and I would probably put Loftus-Cheek or Kovacic in a more offensive-oriented role down that left side of midfield, and Christensen at the back. I think I've encapsulated just about everything that I think Sarri should do.
Well, in my humble opinion, there are some players who shouldn't even be in the mention or anywhere near a mention for a first team spot. Unfortunately, our squad is not big enough. So I think after a performance like Manchester City, Ross Barkley was atrocious. So give him a rest. Some stuff he did was just like not turning up and then doing that stupid mistake for the third goal was just can't really find words for that. Then Marcos Alonso, after that performance, we also should know that he's not capable of playing anymore. Apparently he had a fallout with Maurizio Sarri after the game. I don't know if that is true.
Did he?
Really? That's
Yeah.
something new. I hadn't heard that.
Apparently he told him off and told him that he should find another job because he's useless as playing football.
Wow,
Wait,
okay.
wait. Sarri said that to him.
Apparently.
Wait,
Sarri is all of Twitter.
I'm sorry that I just interrupt you there, but what blows my mind then is why the actual fuck does he continue to use him there? There are options. Emerson, if he doesn't like him, use Azpilicueta there and play Zappacosta on the right. Zappacosta isn't liked by many Chelsea fans, but at least he has been average to decent when called upon in Maurizio Sarri's system. It just works better than Marcos Alonso on the left. Anything would be better. Why the hell did he play him then yesterday? Any blind man could have seen. Anyone with even my girlfriend, and she hates football, would have known that someone who is always slow will get torn apart by someone who is agile and has pace to burn. That is common sense. I'm sorry, that just pisses me off. So please continue while I rate.
And what we also said yesterday while watching the game, our wingers are holding on way too long to the ball. Eden Hazard can get away with it, as he is a brilliant talent and can create something on his own, but Pedro and Willian can't. Pedro sometimes runs around like a headless chicken and plays in the completely wrong directions, running 40 yards backwards and some stupid stuff. So I'm all in favor of Hudson-Odoi playing in that position because he's more direct and he's playing actually that 1 and 2 touch football that Sarri wants to see. So Hudson-Odoi should be having that spot in his pocket already. Other than that, what lacks in that team is characters and players who do really want to play for Chelsea. There's not enough players in the squads who are proper Chelsea. I think Ruben Loftus-Cheek might be the only one where I can really say he wants to play for Chelsea, and all the other players, and you always see it when someone new arrives to the club, says, well, I always wanted to go to England and I'm happy to play in the Premier League. That is the best team in the best league in the world. But yeah, of course, you could also say that when you go to Tottenham or to Arsenal, and I think it wouldn't make any difference for most players where they play in the Premier League because they just want to have a big paycheck and live in London. It's a nice life, and I do understand it. But no one is bleeding blue blood at this club except for Loftus-Cheek, in my opinion. So yeah, I think it would be a good thing if we got more of these players in, and of course these players are out on loan, and there are a few names I want also to mention here, and Ram can take it away from there because he is someone who knows them inside out. I think by the summer, I want Reece James back at the club. I want Mason Mount back at the club, and maybe even Tomori back at the club. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think that this summer the club has to go some way in addressing what they really want, because I think they're pretty clueless right now. And not to deviate too much, but while I'm on this topic, I'd just like to mention what Guardiola said in his pre-match press conference. He said, I mean, he was asked about why Sarri has so many issues with implementing his system and everything. He said Pep happened to mention that he chose Manchester City over Chelsea. He didn't explicitly mention Chelsea, but I'm pretty sure that was implied. He said this. He chose Manchester City because they had a plan, they had a vision, and their director of football was someone who knew him from his days at Barcelona as a player. Basically, their director of football was someone who had been in football for a very long time. Not to say that Marina Granovskaya does not have business acumen. She really does. She's excellent at it. We've seen that. But yeah, we need a director of football because that goes some way in giving us a direction. So this summer, Chelsea should be looking at some players who are impressing out on loan, and they need to look towards re-establishing that core of quote unquote proper Chelsea, as Andy just mentioned, because there are very few players who, well, I don't mean to sound cliched, but really get it. You know, they'd run through a brick wall for the club.
Yeah.
It may sound you know, overly metaphorical and stuff, but
No, it makes sense.
I believe this to be true, and there are a lot of youngsters who have come through the ranks since the age of like 8 and 9. Like Andy mentioned, Mason Mount is one of them. Reece James is another one of them. Even Tomori. So yeah, first I'd like to talk about Reece James. So lately, I think the hype has been picking up on that one, because I'm seeing Reece James get a lot of love on social media these days, which is very good to see, because he's usually been one of those people who goes relatively unnoticed. So his manager, Paul Cook at Wigan Athletic, mentioned that Reece was brought in as defensive cover in their squad, and you know their player of the season last year was Nathan Byrne, who plays right back usually. And within 2 training sessions, it was apparent that Reece James was not going to be like a player who was there for cover. So that goes to show, I mean, the level that he has seen in Reece James after just making the step up from under 23's football. And that has translated over to his minutes on the pitch. Ever since the first game he's played till the last one he played in central midfield, Reece James has been excellent. He's a dead ringer for Wigan's player of the season, in my opinion. And he's probably going to be up there for the championship young player or EFL young player of the year award as well, because he has shown maturity well beyond his years in his first year in professional football. He is just so composed on the ball. He uses his physicality really well, and obviously there's his excellent crossing technique, which suits that game because it's heavily crossing oriented. So Reece James, as I mentioned before on this podcast, I think all he needed to be ready for, say, the Premier League or even Chelsea was 1 year of mental development, getting used to the rigors of the men's game. So he's currently undergoing that. Touchwood, he has not had any injuries yet. So hopefully he gets through the whole 46-game season fit. But he is, in my opinion, probably the closest to the Chelsea squad, alongside the likes of Tammy Abraham maybe, and Mason Mount. So, and right back is an area where, I mean, we are sorely lacking quality right now because Zappacosta has never convinced me. And Azpilicueta, I mentioned that I thought he was a better left back than he is a right back right now, and he is still a good one-on-one defender. But I think the days of him being, well, one of the best one-on-one defenders in the world are fading. I love him, but I think he is past his peak now. So this is actually the perfect time to bed in an emerging talent like Reece James, because it's crazy. Like, I'm sure in the summer there are going to be Premier League clubs inquiring about this lad that Chelsea have had on his books, on their books, sorry, and he hasn't played a single minute of football for them. I read a report by Alan Nixon in the Sun recently saying that Brighton and Crystal Palace are interested in Reece James, and while he's still playing at Wigan, and if Reece James can be considered by, I'm not saying that they're the same as Chelsea, but if he can be considered as a player who can play in the Premier League, there's no reason why he can't at least have a backup role or a regular rotation minutes in our squad. So I think he's one of the players who Chelsea need to phase in. Also, if I'm not rambling too much, you guys know Aaron Wan-Bissaka, right, from Crystal Palace? You know how he's having his breakout season and everything. And to
They
be
love
fair,
him there.
oh yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
they really love him there.
yeah, exactly. And he's getting noticed by a lot of us football fans in general, outside of just Crystal Palace, obviously. And I'd like to compare Aaron Wan-Bissaka to Reece James because Wan-Bissaka, if I'm not wrong, he was not involved with the England youth teams at any level. He was not particularly hailed as an exceptional talent during his time at the youth ranks. And he was almost about to go on loan to a League Two side last January. But I think they had a bit of an injury crisis at that time. So Roy Hodgson threw him in one game, and then he just kept going. He gave him a run of about 5 games, kept him out for fitness's sake, a couple of games. But that run in the side has been so important for Wan-Bissaka that he is now being mentioned in the same rumors as Ben Chilwell, saying that Guardiola wants him in his side next season, and all the top clubs are looking at them. So do you realize how fine the margins are? You know that Harry Kane was pretty mediocre in all his loan spells. A run of games is what got him to where he is right now. It's crazy if you look at it like that, because Chelsea. It's not like Chelsea are filled with middling prospects at youth level who don't particularly win anything or something like that. We are spoon fed with prospects who are held in high regard by, it seems, everyone except us. I don't see why we can't give a run to someone like Reece James or Mason Mount and look to establish them as regulars in the side next season onwards. It'll go a huge way towards building a core.
The question is, of course, how much time will he be given for that?
Yeah,
that's the problem. Yeah, I mean, we won't know until probably the next heavy defeat. But I mean, it doesn't look good. I don't think that they will sack him either, as you said before, because they're trying to, finally give a manager a chance. But if they want to implement this philosophy as badly as they do, or as it's reported, then they have to stick by him. There's no other way, and consequences have to finally be taken on player level, not just manager level. And I mean, board level, of course, but that's not going to happen. So certain players, they're toxic, in my opinion. I just wanted to add that, but because this constant moaning about sacking managers, while we have Conte, we have Jose, and now Sarri, they always let them down. This down tooling that happens, it's got to stop. There are certain players that have been doing this for years. They intoxicate the new arrivals. It's just going to continue until the club sets a sign and sacrifices whoever is one of those culprits. I personally think mostly it will be an attack, and it saddens me to say, but I think that Eden Hazard leaving, even though he's arguably with Zola the best footballer to have ever played for Chelsea Football Club on a technical level, in regard to ability. Maybe it is time because we have been too heavily reliant on him. We need to change things up, and same goes for Willian and Pedro, who also like to down tool very much.
Mhm.
It's always the same. Otherwise, most other players have been here only for a short while, with the exception of, for example, Kante, who doesn't down tool. He just may have a bad day, but he doesn't do that. David Luiz, but he doesn't seem as if he's not trying to play for the manager. He's just not good enough anymore. So
Agreed.
I agree with you. I just wanted to echo your sentiment that Andreas Christensen should be given a chance. And Antonio Rudiger hasn't always been good. He criticised Conte as well. I mean, not that I disagreed with him back then, but still, he has also been crap. And I can think of, him being able to down tool if he doesn't like it. He seems like that kind of an emotional guy. And if I'm not mistaken, that did happen for a brief period at Stuttgart, but I can only vaguely remember reading that up once. So lots of crap going on, very few solutions that will be really happening probably, even though we do have several that we proposed here today. I think we will have to come to an end as we have already been recording for, I think, approximately 50 minutes. So, it's all crap at the moment, but let's just hope that things pick up again. We don't really have any other choice. Ram, as always, despite the sad occasion, it was great to have you on the show.
Sure.
Really, really, really loved your insights and proposals for the future in regard to our loan players, as well, of course, as Andy's. I think it's that time of the show where we will plug each other, or in this case, plug our guests. So, Ram, take it away.
Yeah, so I think Jimmy's already mentioned my Twitter handle, and I made that when I was like 14, so it's pretty badly spelled. Anyway, you can see that in the tweet. But I would like to plug something other than football. So I play bass guitar for a band. We're called Project Mishram, and we fuse genres such as Western genres such as metal, jazz, reggae, blues, with South Indian classical music called Carnatic music. So my band is going to tour the UK in July. We got called to the Nottingham Tech Fest in Newark in July, and where we will be playing some shows in other cities as well. So it would mean a lot if you would check out my band Project Mishram, Mishram, on any platform you like, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud. We're all there. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, I can only very much encourage everyone to follow Ram in that respect. I mean, we only found out today. Once again, huge congratulations, Ram. Can't wait to hear from you how your tour goes. Otherwise, Andy, is there anything else to say?
Not really, apart from follow and listen to the Attacking Two podcast. Follow both Jimmy and myself on Twitter, handles in the description below. Watch us on YouTube. We are also present there. Every podcast is uploaded to YouTube, to iTunes, to Spotify, to Anchor. Choose your favorite platform and listen to us every week. With that being said, we are going to be back next week with a new episode. Hopefully it's going to be a better time round, and we're not losing again in that kind of fashion. With that hope, it's everything that we have to say today. Goodbye, and keep the blue flag flying high.